Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to another Chart Nerd TA video. We're going to dive into Ethereum this morning, looking at certain market conditions, certain structures, patterns, EMAs, so on and so forth, just doing some technical analysis. So straight away off the back, we've got nothing on the charts here, just the candles. I wanted to show you some key resistance lines moving forward for Ethereum. Okay, if we do start to see some sort of pickup here or a bit of a relief rally, there is resistance above that I'm looking for Ethereum to meet. So first off, we've got this trend line here, okay, from the all-time high. So potentially what I was looking at before is from the all-time high, you had this A, this B wave into resistance, which has created this trend line of resistance, and then this C wave down, which actually ties up, I think, was with the 1618. So if we get a fib on from the all-time high, we was retracing down to $1,700, which is now resistance. But you can see that this A, B, C came down and met the 1618 to a T, and this is the local low that we're currently holding that Ethereum put back in on the 13th of June. So that 1618 target has been met. At this point, what happened for ETH is you came back up to the 1 fib, a bit of overextension here, nearly ran into the 786 at 2,155, but at this point you've been sort of hovering down and trying to find support. So we have had, it's relatively normal to see a 1618 target bounce back into resistance. So this previous support, okay, is now our resistance, and we're currently coming down off that, looking for support to try and retest that $2,000 mark, I think it is. Yeah, around $2,000 that we came up in this impulsive wave off of this low in June. So Ethereum came up to 2,000, and since then it has been retracing. So that just explains this trend line resistance. Okay, you've had this A, B, C down, potentially you've ran back up to previous support, turn that to resistance, and are coming back looking for a higher low than this low here. So all is farewell until Ethereum starts to lose this low. So Bitcoin's already done something where it's come up like this, and Bitcoin has lost its foundational low from June, okay, and is now currently running into it as resistance. So is that a forefront or a foresign telling us that Ethereum is a bit lackluster and is going to start to come down and lose its low? Or is it showing us that Ethereum is somewhat stronger than Bitcoin, is looking to come back up and retest resistance? So what we're going to look at here moving forward is some Fibonacci's, and again, as I said, these resistance lines. So do bear in mind, if you start to see Ethereum come up, okay, and retesting this resistance, not saying it's going to happen overnight, but if it does come up and start to break through this and hold it as support, for me, that's your long signal back up to higher targets, okay? But this could be still very, very far away with the conditions at the market at the moment. There's a lot of uncertainty, a lot of fear, and a lot of weak hands, so to speak. So we do need to be careful and cautious moving forward. What I'm trying to do is just show you both sides of the scenario and potential plays. So for me, again, yeah, you've got this key resistance, okay, which is the A and the B wave, sorry, is the B wave high of this ABC. That's what's created this resistance line. You've also got this resistance here that I wanted to point out. So this is something moving forward that I'm going to be keeping an eye on in the near short term, because what you can see here for Ethereum is that you've got this sort of channel or falling wedge where you've come up to resistance, you're coming back holding support, resistance, support, resistance, support. Potentially right now you're looking to long up into resistance and meet this trend line once more. At this point, I think ETH will make a decision. If it does start to come up here and break through and hold this, you are looking for that long, potentially back up to $2,000, okay, meeting this trend line as resistance. It's very hard to say where, because this trend line is continuously changing in price, as like these trend lines here. They continuously move in price over time. But if you was to see Ethereum start to come up here and sort of break through this resistance and hold it as support, for me, that's your long signal back up to this $2,000. And you can see if you was to come down and hold this as support somewhere and start to break out, you'd be tackling this level of resistance to marching back up to this $2,000 mark. And I think that would be very bullish for Ethereum. So for me, that's your bullish scenario, okay? If you start to come up here, hold this as support, you're looking for the long into this resistance. If you break that resistance and manage to retrace to this $2,000, you're getting through it and holding that as support too. You could potentially be coiling up in some large ascending triangle here where you've got support, resistance, support, resistance, okay, and you come back for support and you eventually break out and it makes a decision. So that's a bullish pattern, okay? What we could see here for ETH, if this is a low holding here currently, you could potentially have this ascending triangle in your hands where you've got a level of support and a level of resistance. So sorry, this is a bit confusing, but you've got this support, resistance, support. If you come back up now and meet this resistance at $2,000, come back into this pattern, retest this descending trend line that we're currently under as resistance and hold that as support, then you're looking for your breakout. Essentially, once you start tackling this key level of resistance, as I've said, that's on us here, that's very bullish for Ethereum. Okay, and what could be happening is you're literally just coiling up, waiting for that break, back tested support, breakout, and boom, Ethereum's off, retracing to higher highs, okay, that it previously came down from. So that's the bullish scenario. If you start to hold support here, this is the low, you hold a higher low than this low, you've got ascending support. If you start to tackle out of this resistance here for Ethereum, again, your next contact for me is this level of resistance, this trend line here. Again, if you start to take out that and this $2,000 mark, bullish. Okay, but that's not to say that there isn't key resistance above, because again, this is resistance. Okay, this trend line here is resistance. There's lots of resistance above us. Okay, and there's basically not that much foundational support below. For me, at the moment, one bullish thing here for Ethereum that I've noticed is from this high retracing to this low, okay, to this 1 fib. What you can see that right now, yesterday, the weekly close was actually above the 0618 at $1,210. We closed above that, and we also closed below this little double bottom pattern here that Ethereum broke out of before in regards to that started this pump up to $2,000. So essentially what you could say or see here for Ethereum is that all you've done is so far is currently come back and back test. This was previous resistance. You've broken out, ran into more resistance, come back, and you've been holding this area of support. So if you start to see Ethereum close below $1,212, for me, that's indicating that maybe you're going to come up into resistance here. If you do start to come back and lose this $12,000, potentially you are looking to retrace back down to the lows in June, just like Bitcoin has done, where it's come up and it's just basically rolled down, lost its low, ran into resistance, and is still getting rejected. Is Ethereum going to do something similar here, or is it going to hold support, tackle through this resistance, and start to march its way back up to that $2,000 mark? Okay, so these are our two scenarios. So if you start to close below $1,210, do look for the retracement back down to this low that we put in June, okay, of around $880. Do look for that low. But if you do start to tackle out of this resistance here and hold it as support, do look for long into this resistance line. It's literally that simple. It's a game of support and resistance. This is your resistance. At the moment, this is your support. You're caught between a rock and a hard place. But this is a bullish pattern forming here. If you can squeeze down in this formation, this sort of falling wedge or falling channel, and eventually get the breakout of resistance, this is where you could see Ethereum start to pick up here. And as I said, you've got that ascending level of support. For me, the next sort of bullish scenario, if Ethereum was to be holding this low, retracing to this high, okay, you've got key levels of resistance above. As I've mentioned, you've got this high here, which is currently the 0618 at 1595. That's very strong resistance. If you start to come up here and you start to run into the 050 or the 0618 and meet that as resistance again, I would expect some sort of pullback. And this is where you could actually retest this trend line, this multi-month trend line that Ethereum's been in. At this point, if you do fail and get rejected and come down and lose this 1 fib and lose this low, again, you're going to be retracing to this low here. So moving forward, we've got key levels of resistance above to break out of. You've got the 236, which is what we're approaching right now at $1,252. Once you get through that, if you hold that as support, you've also got the 382 above at 1373, so on and so forth. You work your way through these fibs. But the golden areas that I normally tend to see resistance at are the 0618 and the 050. Now you can see again, if you do start to work your way up here and run into this 0618, this ties up with this multi-month resistance. At this point, I do think resistance would be met, and you again would be looking to come back and form some sort of higher low here, trying to break out. But if you was to lose that and do get rejected at one of these areas and start to retrace to this 1 fib, if you lose that, again, essentially you're coming back down to the June lows, aren't you? For me, there's resistance moving forward, but I just wanted to point out those key signals to you. If you do start to break them, then we could be looking at some impulsive moves. Now, the impulsive moves, if you do start to come up and tackle through $2,000 and you hold this low that we put in on the 7th of November, if you could start to come up, work your way up through the fibs here, hold them as support, break this trend line, and essentially tackle out of $2,000, then my long opportunity is for Ethereum to go back up to $3,000 somewhere. And this is basically a structural bottom where you're starting to reverse, flip the switch, and work your way back up to previous highs. But again, as I've said, there's multiple levels of resistance above. You've got this trend line here where there's multiple points of contact. You've got the 0618 at 1594, which is where we're currently being rejected by. You've got $2,000, which is the previous support band of the bull market that is now turned into resistance. So you've got a lot of resistance above, a hell of a lot of resistance above, and not much support below. So key points to take away: start tackling through this trend line. I think you're looking to retest this descending trend line and the 0618 at 1594. Yeah, so at 1594. And if you start to tackle out of that, do look for this, as I've said, do look for that as resistance again, of which I think Ethereum will make a decision. So that's the bullish scenario. You start to come up here and retrace to this $2,000 mark, holding higher support, and as long as you can continue in this sort of ascending level of support and eventually break out of these trend lines, okay, that's very bullish, okay, especially if you start to take out $2,000. So that's the key resistance I'm looking to break above. We could be looking to retest it now and run into this resistance. So we could potentially in the near short term have some sort of 45 to 50% long opportunity. If you break out of this descending resistance, you're going to attack this $2,000. Okay, so all this market FUD could be just drawing us down for a last sort of buy-in area before a breakout to higher levels of resistance, okay, and retracing to this 1 fib up here at 2000. So that's the bullish scenario for me, okay. You're holding support off of this low, you're looking to come up and retest this $2,000 mark. As long as you can continue to hold ascending support and bounce back up and down here, you're looking for a breakout relatively soon. That's the bullish scenario. And if he was to break out, you'd have a technical target, okay. As I said, I think that $3,000 mark is where I was looking at. But if he was to break out, you could see that if it broke out of this ascending triangle, this large ascending triangle, it's a bit ironic, or the target actually ties up with the all-time high. For all we know, we could be just in some sort of accumulation phase, holding a level of resistance, a higher level of support, build up here, and if you start to break out $2,000 and holding above that, you've got your long back up to the all-time high, in my opinion. It's not going to happen overnight, don't get me wrong. It doesn't have to happen, of course not. So what are the downside targets? Well, moving forward, simple as, okay, you've got this resistance, and as I said, you've got this support. If Ethereum starts to come down here and loses its $800 support, its $870 support, if we start to continuously funnel down, do something like this, continue to get rejected, and we actually lose this low, okay, I would expect some sort of relief rally. But if you did come down and lose this low, for me, you've got these targets here that I'm looking at for Ethereum. So potentially what you could have is some sort of wave 1, a wave 2, a wave 3. This is your wave 4, and right now you're starting the wave 5 down to either the 1272 at $700 or even further, the 1618 at 520, and that would be the correction over. Now, what gives some confluence to coming down to this 520 mark and this 1618 is if you start to lose this 1 fib, essentially. Bitcoin's already lost this 1 fib and lost this support. Okay, so if ETH does come down and lose that and hit its head on it, ultimately, I think the 1618 would be met. I think you would see some sort of, potentially you're coming down here, have a little bit of retracement, and then some sort of flash crash, okay? Some really big flash crash. And if that does come into play, you can see that the 1618 at 515 actually ties up with very close to previous resistance that we haven't back tested in August 2020. So you can see Ethereum came up here, came up to this point, came back to support, it broke out, and it hadn't looked back since. So potentially all you're doing is you've broken out of this resistance and potentially ETH is just looking to retrace back down to that before getting continuation and breaking out. So if we do start to lose support of this 1 fib here, ultimately this is the next high to look at, and the 1618 at around $515 if we do lose the 1 fib, okay, because what you're doing then is you've come up to resistance, okay, and you're starting something called a reversal wave or a continuation wave, and potentially there's waves within waves. So this is an ABC here, okay, to the 1618 target we showed at the start of the video. But what that could also be is this ABC could be a large A wave, this is your B wave, and then you get your C wave down to the 1618 at 515, where you bounce off of previous resistance and turn that into support, and that's when Ethereum starts its powerful run or continuation. And you can see that, I mean, zooming out here, yeah, I mean, you've lost this high. Okay, you've lost that high. So essentially, I do think potentially you're looking to come down for a lower leg of support. And this, as I said, there's waves within waves. So this A, B, C is a wave A. And then you've got this wave B high into resistance. And potentially right now you're forming this A, B, C down to this 1618 target of $515. So that's my bearish targets for you guys. That's my bearish targets at the most. I think Ethereum would bounce off there ridiculously well. But I think you're looking, okay, if you do lose this 1 fib, you've got the 1272, which would act as support, and again would tie up around with this cluster here, and then you've got the 1618 that ties up with this cluster here at $518. So if you do see Ethereum fail to hold support, fail to break out of this resistance, okay, and continuously get pushed down in this channel all the way down to the 1 fib and lose that, again, you're looking at $692 at a minimum, with an extensive push to 515 if all comes into play. So that's the bearish side for me, guys, okay? You're either forming some lovely ascending triangle and you've got resistance, and currently speaking, you've got support where you're bouncing off the 1618, if you can continue to hold this ascending support and re-attack this $2,000, I do think over time, if you start to tackle out of this high, this is the confirmation signal to go long. Okay, and you're going to start retracing to previous highs. Again, that's the bullish scenario. The bearish scenario is if you start to come up to resistance here and fail to break, and you start losing and retracing to this 1 fib, okay, and losing this low in June. For me, you've got those targets down to 515 and the 1272 that I showed you. So that's a quick update for you today on Ethereum. I hope you enjoyed the content. If you did, please do like, comment, and subscribe. From Chart Nerd TA, take care. Peace out.